Hey guys, Peter Franson here from christiangeekcentral.com and Spirit Blade Productions. Welcome to Essential Issues Weekly, where I talk about DC Comics recently released on the Ultra tier of the DC Universe Infinite subscription service 1 month after their original print publishing date. In each installment, I pick an assortment of comics to talk about as a DC fan and also explore what, if anything, they have to say about the essential issues of real life. Now, warning, full spoilers for everything that I talk about, so be aware, this is your first and only warning that many spoilers lie ahead. Right now, we're taking a look at comics originally published on February 7th, 2023, and there's a lot I could choose from. I read a little bit of Static, and I think that's just for a younger audience than me, and I really kind of wanted, normally I would comment on Batman 132. That is the series that I'm currently kind of still catching up on, and so it felt a little weird to just start right here. And then also 132 was clear from the very beginning. It was part 2 of a story arc, and I was like, this is just a bad time on multiple levels for me to jump in right now. So I will be talking about the Batman comic book series certainly in this series in the future, but I'm not quite ready to do that yet, I don't think. So this time I'm talking about Lazarus Planet Next Evolution and The Flash 792. And I went long last time, so I really tried to make some bullet point notes for myself to try and condense my thoughts a little bit. As far as Lazarus Planet The Next Evolution, as I've said in the past, the Lazarus Planet event books, the one-shots, are really just not connecting with me. They're dealing with brand new characters or 4th tier, 5th tier characters and trying to, kind of shine a spotlight on them. But I don't know who these characters are, and there's not anything in these stories so far that's really hooking me and wanting me to keep an eye on them in the coming months, as they presumably will continue to invest more time in them. So it just feels like quantity over quality. I would rather they would go deep introducing me to maybe just 1 or 2 max of these characters in these one-shots. But the way they're going and the time they're spending in the limited panels they have available is just not in a way that's really connecting with me. So I am going to comment, though. I mean, there's Red Hood is part of this issue, and I have some experience with Red Hood, so I'll be curious if they're going to do something interesting with him. I guess this story here didn't really hook me. Who else? Oh, Ra's al Ghul apparently is going to be coming back, or at least there's something there's a splash page that indicates that that's a really, really good chance. But really, I wanted to comment just on the thematic stuff that I saw in this story about a character called Red Canary that I am not at all familiar with, probably won't be familiar with going forward. This story seems to be written for a young crowd. It's very kind of silly and comedic and stuff like that, and it's just not what I read comic books for at all. But what grabbed my attention was the idea of the compass that Red Canary is using to guide her life. And there's just, or rather maybe what the writer kind of thinks should be the compasses that we should use to guide our lives. I don't know, but that seems to be a theme. She's a college student trying to figure out what she ought to do with her life next. Her parents, who are paying for her school, are pulling her in one direction. She doesn't like the direction that they're pulling her in. While she's out fighting crime, her crime-fighting partner, as they're kind of talking about this in passing, says, "So what do you want? To make your parents happy or to make yourself happy?" And I really think he's being written as the helpful friend. And what is between the lines there that I think were meant to, I could be wrong. I don't know, can't ever know the writer's intent. We just have to speculate. But it seems to me that the writer's intent is to be favorably leaning toward this idea of making yourself happy. Do you really want to just obsess over making your parents happy, or do you want to make yourself happy? And I would want to interject a third option, that maybe you ought to choose a life path that is meaningful, that is purposeful. But as we get into that, that's going to get into philosophical underpinnings. It's going to get into the question of, is there such a thing as objective truth, objective virtues that we all ought to be pursuing? And typically in entertainment, well, I don't want to say typically, it's selectively, very selectively, I'll say, in entertainment. There's a lack of desire to commit to any kind of objective moral values. So what's left? Well, I guess just kind of making yourself happy. And that's solidified a little bit by a scene a little bit later. Let me see if I can jump to it here, where kind of as a joke, so I don't want to make too much out of it. I've totally lost my place now. But kind of as a joke, he says WWCB. And she's like, what are you talking about? WWCB? What in the world does that refer to? And he says, what would Black Canary do? So I guess Black Canary is in some way kind of her idol, her template that she's trying to follow, you know. And of course, you know, this is just a pretty much a mindless, thoughtless joke. I don't think there's anything deeply philosophical being intended here. But it just kind of, I've seen this kind of joke, this morphing of the original WWJD, What Would Jesus Do?, which was popular, I don't know, 10, 20 years ago, something like that. You know, I've seen people jokingly put other figures in place of Jesus. But I mean, it's just kind of another reminder that, okay, well, who are we patterning our lives after? After what our parents tell us, after what our own desires are, after our heroes in life who are themselves just flawed humans as well. I mean, if you take a look at Black Canary stories, you'll find a flawed character there as well, you know. So what would Black Canary do is not going to be the ultimate compass in every life situation, you know. For that matter, you know, even if we look at what would Jesus do, there's some complexity. That's a very oversimplified kind of question to ask oneself. But anyway, and then just a couple panels later, it was striking to me that Red Canary, in thinking about, you know, what she ought to do next, sees a billboard that has Black Canary on it, and it's in a store, like a music store. And the name of the music store is Go Your Own Way Music. And so as she's thinking about what would Black Canary do, she sees a poster of Black Canary in this music store called Go Your Own Way. And she says, maybe this is a sign. Go Your Own Way Music was the first place, I took down a bad guy and where I bought my guitar. Maybe I can go my own way. I'm like, oh my gosh, really? Oh, wow. That's just kind of a scary way to guide your life off of these happenstance things that, you know, maybe there seems to be some kind of interesting coincidence going on, but then you're inferring from that, okay, you can go your own way, make yourself happy, follow your heart. So what I'm seeing here is just kind of like ultimately this roundabout way of repackaging the old slogan, follow your heart, do what feels right, do what you want to do, which leads people into all kinds of destruction toward themselves, toward others around them, you know. So it's just interesting to see that kind of life philosophy being repackaged and presented in a different way. Now, maybe we'll see in the future with this character that this is going to, as it plays out, be a disastrous choice for her to choose to go her own way. Maybe there'll be, you know, a bait and switch, and we're being set up for actually some wise counsel through the story of her going her own way, and kind of seeing that as a cautionary tale. But I don't know. I have my doubts. That's usually not how these things go. But in either case, I'm probably not going to be following Red Canary to find out. Let's see. So that's enough for Lazarus Planet Next Evolution. The Flash 792. This is the one DC book that, as I jump in here at the dawn of DC, roughly, you know, the pre-launch of Dawn of DC, this is the one book that I am all caught up on. And I like that they've introduced, well, here, let me just comment. Let me try to stick to my bullet points. I like that it starts out with this moment of heart. You know, we had the cliffhanger at the end of the last issue of The Flash where Barry was screaming no into the sky because it seemed that Iris had died. But of course, they're in this hyperspeed mode where speedsters are moving at super speed, which to them and to us as readers just looks like normal speed. But everyone else is frozen. And so is Iris dead or irrevocably dying? Well, we won't know until time restarts. She could be frozen just moments before death and is still preservable. And so he takes her and lays her down on her bed, and is just having this moment with her, and just very sweetly, quietly, they give space. Very little dialogue on this page. And he's just holding her hand, Wally comes, puts his hand on Barry's shoulder, that Jay wants to talk to us, he says, and Barry just takes one more moment, kisses her on the forehead, and quietly says, "Love you forever, Iris." And so anytime a book is going to give space to that kind of, it's the same thing I look for in movies. Give space for just the visuals of the characters and how they're presenting their emotions to tell some of that story. So I appreciate that. This issue focuses quite a bit on Impulse and Kid Flash. Impulse has reemerged from the Speed Force somehow. Now, what's weird to me is, I don't know if they addressed this somewhere, but before, if I'm not mistaken, before the Flashpoint event, Impulse had grown up and had even been the Flash for a little while, but they aged him up at super speed, which never seems to go well. And then eventually there was just a big reset. We never asked what happened to him after that. But when they brought him back, they bring him back as younger and as impulsive again, because even before he'd been aged up, he had this rude awakening in the Teen Titans book written by Jeff Johns, where he realized, you know what? I can't be impulsive anymore. I need to get serious. And so for a while, he really changed his tune and was written very differently, I think to the dismay of a number of Impulse fans. But at the time, I really liked it because I found Impulse extremely grating and annoying. I don't know, maybe I'll feel different about him now because I've got boys of my own that would be roughly this character's age. Or maybe he's being written in a different way, or maybe it's nostalgia. I don't know. But for some reason, I find myself kind of open to seeing what they do with Impulse. He's a nice contrast to Wallace West, or as they're calling him now, Ace. When they made the decision to bring Wally West, the original Wally West, back, you got a problem. Well, in the New 52, we have a Wally West already, and he's this black kid from a totally different. Is he from Deer Valley or Blue Valley or whatever the heck Wally is from? I can't remember if they're from the same place. But, clearly this is not the same character. They're calling him Wally West. They make a kind of a joke out of it, and the fact that even though they are the parents of two different siblings, I believe, of Iris West, they both independently chose to name their kids Wally or Wallace, or maybe one of them chose Walter. I don't know. But when the original Wally West came back, I think just for simplicity's sake, they started slowly calling the new Wally West Wallace. And I was like, that's good. You've got to do something. Otherwise, people are going to fall into the very awkward, oh yeah, it's the black Wally West, So they started calling him Wallace for a while, but I like what they've settled on in recent issues of The Flash, where Wally West, in talking to Wallace, kind of in a retconned way, establishes that apparently he used to, kind of like a joking older brother to his cousin Wallace, used to call him Ace. And maybe that was something they did at family gatherings to differentiate between the two, because Ace is the back half of Wallace, And I think he always had really strong aptitudes for math and science and stuff. And so that was a nickname, apparently. And I think that's a really cool kind of evolution of how do we figure out what are we going to call this kid when Wally West is back, and we can't be calling him both Wally all the time. So anyway, that's kind of a bit of a rabbit trail, but I like the evolution of kind of like what they're doing with him, how they're referring to him, and I like how his character has arrived at this point where he is very capable. Ace is a very appropriate nickname. And then to pair him up with Impulse is perfect because they're about the same age. Impulse was Kid Flash for a while. They're just kind of two sides of a coin in some senses, and their personalities are so different that it's great to see them kind of butting heads against each other. And what's interesting is that at one point they're being hunted by this character that is able to hunt not via sound or sight, because she apparently doesn't see or hear, but she is a mind reader. And so her window to the entire world around her is based on, I guess, reading people's minds and getting maybe her spatial orientation that way. I'm not sure exactly how it all works. They just first introduced that concept in this issue. But for a moment, they're kind of taken off guard because she's moving at the same speed as they are. They're all, these are the aliens that came down that are all super speedsters. And so she can move as fast as they can. She's got these alien attack dogs that can move really fast and seem to be able to anticipate what they are about to do right before they do it. And so Impulse's solution is, okay, so follow me. And Ace says, well, what now? And he says, I don't know, that's the point. Don't think, just do stuff. Which, of course, reminds me a little bit of Heath Ledger's line as the Joker. I just do things, And it's that impulsiveness in this moment that, just panels before, Ace was like, you got to think this through. And Impulse is like, do you not understand why they call me Impulse? And they make it a strength in this very unusual situation. And, they're not going to be able to keep doing that. I think Impulse is going to work best as a character when he's the fly in the ointment of the other speedsters, But here, I think they're probably doing this so that Ace and Impulse, Bart, that's the name, like Bart Allen, I keep forgetting. He's the grandson of Barry Allen. But so that Ace and Bart can have this point of connection. I think they will continue probably in the future to be butting heads, and it'll probably result in some really interesting, funny, and enjoyable storytelling. But having this point of connection now makes sense, and I think that's a sensible way to do it. What doesn't make sense for me about this story, though, is at one point they refer to, early on, they refer to the fact that they're all moving at top speed. And it's a small little detail, but I'm like, if you're moving at top speed, then why are we ever seeing the blur lines behind you when you move faster? Because you shouldn't be able to move faster if you're moving at top speed, or you should enter the speed force, when you're moving at top speed. I think visually, there's two ways you can go to present them constantly moving at super speed. One is the route they're going, where you're not seeing super speed effects, they're just moving and the rest of the world is frozen. The other way, which probably take a lot more time, but it would certainly be more spectacular, is to constantly show electricity lines and blur lines trailing behind them, which, that might, just be like keeping the volume at 11 all the time, which would just be a little bit much after a while. But anyway, it's just a minor detail, but I'll be interested to see kind of where this thing goes. It's a story that, in and of itself, is not super captivating to me, except for the fact that it is bringing all these speedsters together, and I assume laying a groundwork for what and who the Flash comic book is going to be about going forward. So anyway, yeah, I think those are all of my thoughts for now. As always, I'd love to get your thoughts and reactions in the comments below. Please remember to check out christiangeekcentral.com for tons more content. That's all for now. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.
Do you believe in the supernatural?
Download the Legacy Edition of Spirit Blade, a full past audio drama, for free at spiritblade.com.